Hi everyone. Adani versus Hindenburg looks like the flavor of the season and the topic to discuss these days. We've had enough discussions around who Hindenburg is. Now, whether Hindenburg is right or wrong, only time will tell. I don't have any kind of magic wand to actually predict who will come out on which side at the end of this saga. But in this rhetoric, in this panic, we seem to have missed one question. What was the other frauds that Hindenburg actually unearthed? And what exactly happened there? And how does that compare to what is happening or at Adani? So in this video, what we will do is we will go through some other research reports of Hindenburg, quickly summarize what was the fraud that was exposed, and then of course look at Adani and its businesses and try and figure out whether it's as bad as it looks. So here it goes. The most famous expose of Hindenburg was Nikola Motors, an EV/hydrogen vehicle manufacturer, which had very tall claims with nothing to show for it. So essentially, the entire company was built on a product which never existed. Sooner or later, it had to fall. The second one, which Hindenburg exposed, was WINS Finance, listed in US markets. What it failed to disclose to the US investors and the regulators was that the parent company, which held a 67-68% stake in the company, had become insolvent in China. Now that was a very major blunder. If the parent, the biggest shareholder, has become insolvent in China and your business is dependent on them, then how do you function? And you fail to disclose it? Wow. Then of course it's a Chinese company. What else can you expect out of them? Third one, China Metal Resource Utilization Group. Again, a Chinese company with questionable financials and businesses. You know who was the auditor of this company? Ernst & Young. One fine day they get up and say we will not sign off the audit report because of questionable practices. My question is, these practices would not have appeared magically in the last 10-12 months which they were auditing. They must have been going on for some time. What was EY doing all this time? How did it miss these accounting manipulations in the earlier years? The next one, a company called SC Works. The whole company was again based on fraud. Some shady COVID-19 testing deal which they claimed, which made the stock spike. And then, of course, since the deal was not there, it crashed and burned. The next one, a company called Predictive Technology Group. Again the same story, based on some shady COVID-19 claims. When they didn't materialize, they got burnt. So essentially, no substance at all. The next one, there was something called a Smile Direct Club, which was essentially a chain of dentistry clinics. But a quick search would have revealed poor customer reviews, lawsuits, regulatory investigations, and even allegations of practicing dentistry without proper licensing. Again, if you are invested by regulators and you are practicing dentistry without a license, now how much more brazen can you get? The next one, something called Bloom Energy. Their fault, their Achilles heel was a massive restatement of nearly 4 years of financials due to material accounting errors, as they claimed. Now, who was the auditor? You may ask. Deloitte was the auditor. Again, were they sleeping for those last 4 years? How did they sign off on those reports? Remains a mystery, remains a question mark. The next one, Yangtze River Ports and Logistics. Yangtze River Ports and Logistics. The finding of Hindenburg was that the company's key asset, which is the port, didn't seem to exist. Now, it's one thing to claim a miracle drug or anything, but something like a port, which is a physical asset, which is simply not there, which is cooked up, is in the realm of fantasy, but looks like we all bought into it. So those were the major exposes by Hindenburg. If you see all of them, they had either tall claims with no products backing it, they had assets that claimed assets which were simply not there, or they had accounting practices which were overlooked by the largest of names for a very long period of time over multiple years. So now let's look at Adani Group of companies, or as Hindenburg is claiming, the financial frauds and irregularities in the companies. What are Adani businesses? Let's have a quick look at them. Adani Ports, they own ports in India, in Israel now, and in Australia. Again, a simple asset backed business. If I drive down the ports of Gujarat, Kandla, I see Adani Port. Israel, I do see a Haifa port today, which of course they bought just a few days back. So nothing hidden, the asset is there. Adani Total Gas is into gas distribution. Again, a very, very visible infrastructure in place with ongoing deliveries to consumers. ACC and Ambuja, cement factories, they've been there in the country forever. Earlier they were held by other groups, including Aditya Birla Kumar Mangalam Group, but they're there. Simply because they are owned by Adani does not mean that the factories vanish, right? The factories are there. Adani Green Energy is into renewable power generation with actual working power plants in Gujarat and in other parts of the country. Adani Wilmar, it's in the FMCG space, primarily into edible oils, and its products, maybe 50% of India uses its products, and it's available everywhere. Adani Transmission, they're into power distribution again. We see Adani Transmission being and the power distribution infrastructure in Bombay, in Gujarat, and in multiple other parts of the country. So one thing is very, very clear from all this. Whether Adani Group is overvalued or not, it is backed by assets. The assets are all long-term infrastructure assets which are clearly operational, most of it, and which are actually generating revenues. Can those revenues be manipulated? To a certain extent they can be, but I don't really know how can you manipulate the airport revenues or the port revenues, which are very clearly audited and controlled by multiple agencies. Cement revenues, the companies which we are talking about, whether it's ACC, Ambuja, they've been in the business for decades now, and the data is available. After coming into Adani's fold, they haven't really changed their stripes and suddenly doubled or tripled production capacity of their plants. So there also the revenues, cash flows are pretty stable and pretty predictable, and I believe true. As far as Adani Enterprises goes, Adani Enterprises holds airports, roads, metro and rail assets, data centers, which are all large scale infrastructure plays with visible work around it. And it also incubates a lot of smaller businesses and then demerges them from itself, making it the incubation vehicle for Adani Group as such. They currently have real estate, also finance company, and a few more businesses in the fold. But if you look at the picture as a whole, all of their businesses are good, old, boring businesses. At no point of time had they made tall claims that they have discovered the best mousetrap in the world, or they have discovered the next generation of energy source, or they've developed a battery which will run forever. At no place, at no time did they claim any such things. Another question which the Hindenburg report raises is that they are audited by small companies, small audit firms and CA firms. My whole rebuttal or question to that is, we have seen time and again the work of large audit firms and how they've spectacularly failed to carry out their professional responsibilities. In case of Hindenburg targets itself, China Metal Resource Utilization Group, Smile Direct Group, Bloom Energy, Enron, you name it. They were all audited by large firms, but did they carry out their responsibilities in a true and ethical manner? We all have the answer to that. So yes, a large firm may have larger resources at its disposal, but that does not mean a smaller firm cannot carry out the same assignment with the same integrity and the same level of diligence that is required for it. The second question which is there is Adani a house of cards which is ready to fall? I don't think so. I personally don't think so. Simply because all their businesses are good, old, boring, traditional businesses. The backbone is already throwing enough cash, whether it's cement, whether it's gas distribution, power, FMCG, edible oils, they're all profitable businesses. Are they over leveraged? Maybe, maybe not. According to me, their leverage is much lower than a lot of SME leverages which I see, smaller company leverages which I see on a day-to-day basis. And they are long-term infrastructure plays which are normally cash generation machines, slow and steady cash generation machines. Are they overvalued today? Maybe. That's for everyone to decide. I am no one to say what's the valuation, right valuation for a company. It's for the markets to decide. But yes, they do have very high PE levels and very high multiples. So in conclusion, I believe there is much more than it meets the eye in terms of what Hindenburg has presented. Of course, I have my questions around the timing of the report, which is just before the FPO. I also have my questions in terms of who is actually benefiting from this. I would like to understand who actually benefited from this short sale of Adani stocks this fall. I would also want to know the actors behind Hindenburg, and of course there is that political angle, the general election in 18-24 months. And if there is some substance to the rumor that it's done keeping the 24 elections in mind, then I would like to see how that plays out in the political arena also. But overall, I believe it was a good report. Hindenburg did present a lot of consolidated facts around Adani. But did it deserve the panic which we are seeing? No. Will Adani as a group default and become one of the collateral damages, one of the business houses which rose too fast and then crashed and burned? No. Adani will survive this. Adani will come out stronger, because when I say stronger, I don't necessarily mean in terms of stock market valuations, but in terms of its disclosures, its corporate practices, and the overall strength of the organization. With that, this is Saurabh Maheshwari signing off. Until next time, see you around.